welcome to my channel Tech Planet AI. So my name is Ashish Bansal. So in this lecture, we will be studying about Python FastAPI project using Poetry and Docker. So I have already released a video uh, containing the information about how we can have our project built by using Poetry. So in this video lecture, I would be going to demonstrate the FastAPI project. So earlier we have build our virtual environment using Poetry, and in today's lecture I will be explaining you about the FastAPI project using Poetry, and then we will be moving towards our Docker, how we can containerize it, and then we can raise it to the production. Okay, so please subscribe to my channel and please like and share, and for more tech related videos, please follow the updates and click on the bell icon. Okay, so let's begin. So I will open up my PyCharm. Okay, so where we left, so in previous lecture, so this is the continuation of the previous lecture, part 1, and this is part 2, and we have already built our demo project, fast API Poetry project, using Poetry toml and Poetry log, and now we have also installed some of the libraries such as your pandas. So I showed you how to install your numpy, sorry, not pandas, numpy, right? So in this lecture, so we will be needing the all the dependencies. I would be giving you step-by-step instructions how you can create your fast API project, how you can use and structure it, right? Okay, what is the project structure? So let's begin. Okay, so first of all, what is the first thing you will do, how we can make our project? So first thing, we already installed our dependencies and we have used our Poetry, right? Second thing is that we will create the readme file. So guys, don't ignore this readme.md file. So this is very much necessary in building up your project, because it, by this you can just demonstrate, or you can just tell other users that what is included in my project structure. Okay, so we will be keep on updating this readme.md file, right? But for the time being, I have made this readme.md file. So another file which I'm gonna create is your .getignore, right? So what is this .getignore? So this is a file in which you can say that, let's say I am building a project structure. There I don't want to push my folders into my Git repository. Let's say I have a data folder in which all the data exist. So I don't want to uh, uh, my Git repository consume lot of space, right? For that, I will just say that in this, whatever folders or files I don't want to get published into my Git repository, I will list down here. Okay, so this is the gitignore file, which tells us that all the necessary folders or files which you don't want to push into Git repository, you can list down here. Okay, so next is your .env file. So what is this .env file? So so basically .env file is a file in which you can simply say that all my variables or my passwords or my data could be placed in this .env, which is your environmental files. So I can place all the environmental variables here, and I can access these environmental variables through my Python code. Okay, so it is basically, let's say it consists of some sensitive information, let's say your passwords, your AWS credentials also it can hold, but you can also put it into your git ignore file, so that it does not get pushed along with when you are trying to push your code, right? Okay, so now these are the basics, and then also for your project structure, so let's make a directory, and I will come up with this. I will say it backend, right? So now I have created a directory called backend. In my backend, so I need to list down some directories or folders, right? So the first folder is your API folders, right? So I am listing down all the folders which are required for this project, right? So basic structure is follows, like you can also include your own folders as per your convenience, but the basic, and I will be it's a boilerplate basically. Okay, so let's begin. And in the API, so I need to have two folders, which is my routers, right? And then you have your models, right? Okay, so I could have it under your models, I could say models, right? Okay, so instead of putting under this API, you can put these models and routers in your app folder also, right? So what does it says? So my backend consists of my API is your fast API, and it consists of some models and your routers, right? Okay, so inside your API, so I could create another directory folder which is your app folder, and inside my app folder I could place the models and your routers inside it. Okay, so guys, I'm trying to do is I'm trying to restrict your backend. In your backend there is an API folder in which all the API related stuff you can do in this folder, right? So not only it will have the API, so it will have other folders. Let's say it would have a logs folder in which you wanted to play some logs, so I will put it in logs folder. Okay, so then you can also have your data folder, let's say, in which you can place and test your data, right? And then you can have your utils also basically, uh, in which the utils basically are helper functions in which you wanted to perform, right? Okay, then inside your app, so there's another folder which I wanted to create, which is your core folder, right? So basically in your app, in your API, so you have your app folder, and in your app you have your models and your core, right? So though this core can be placed inside your app also, and outside your app also. So it is your convenience, it is your wish whether you wanted to place your core folder where, right? So I generally place it under your API folder, so I will put it under my API folder, right? So API consists of app and your core. Okay, right? Okay, so inside your core, so I will create a file called, it's a Python file, and I will say that config.py, right? Okay, so let us try to, so what is the first thing we need, right? So we need our environmental variables. So I need to create some environmental variables which could be accessed using a Python file, which is your config file, right? Okay, so how we can access our environmental variables and get inside our config, that we wanted to parse this file, and after parsing we need to we can import this file, and from that file so we can get any variables, right? So basically how the flow goes, so here you are trying to define all the variables, and then you are trying to reach to this file, you are calling this file, and then you are trying to get all the necessary what we say parameters, and you can pass these parameters to some other Python file. Okay, so let's do that. So what I will do is I will create in the .env file, I will create a app title, let's say. So I wanted to have a app title, and I will say that demo fast API poetry project. Okay, so this is my demo fast API title. So let's try to see and access these environmental variables from our config. So I will go into this config.py. So in this config.py, so I need to access this .env file. So for that I need some library. So what is the library? What is the name of that library? That the name of the library is your python.env, right? So I need to include that in your project.toml. So how I can add that library? So I will simply say poetry add python dash dot env, right? Okay, so now it is being resolving dependency, and it is getting installed, and I will say that poetry install, right? Okay, so now the library has been installed. So what I will say that from the config file I wanted to load my .env files, right? So I would say that from .env, right, load underscore .env, right? And I also need pathlib. I will say from pathlib import path, fine. Okay, so now I need to have a let's say, so I wanted to load this .env, right? Load dot underscore dot env, right? So in this dot env equal to, right? So here I need to give the path of this file, right? So how I can access that path? So by using this path, right? And I would say underscore file, and then I would say dash, right? So because you are in this directory, right, so this config file, right, so you wanted to go first in the core, that is dot dot, then you wanted to go into the API, another dot dot, then you wanted to go into the backend, which is another dot dot, right? Then you are here, right, you are in the backend, then you wanted to join your backend with your .env because it is outside your env, right? So backend dot env, fine. Okay, right? So what I can do is I can put this .env inside my backend also to get all the things in place, right? So .env is here, fine. And here also I can create a .main file in which all the things are being reside in this backend. So we have a folder structure like this in which we have API. In this we have app, we have models, we have routers. Here we have the core, which is your config.py, and then we have data logs, and in the logs we could have a demo.log, or we can say that like API.logs, a kind of a file in which the logs getting stored, on which on when the users click on that particular API. In the utils we have the helper functions, and we have a .env file which exists inside your backend, right? And here you can create another file which is your main.py, right? So this is the main file in which we would be calling this main, right? Okay, so all the things exist in this backend folder only. Okay, and I need to place it here. Okay, okay, so this is your main, and this file is, I'll delete this file. So this is comes by the default Python, delete. Okay, okay, so now we are here, we are inside the core and we are trying to access. So I will say that dot, and then I will put a codes dot dot, then I will put again slash, and then dot dot, and then again slash, and then again dot dot, then I would say dot resolve, right? And I would save it as a directory path, right? So directory path equal to this thing, right? So then I would say that os dot path dot join. So I wanted to join my directory path with my .env file. So I will say .env file, fine. And I would say that env path, env underscore path. Okay, then I wanted to load this env. So now here the os library is missing, so I would say that import os, right? So here I need to put import, and then I would say that I need to have that path, that is your env path. Fine. Okay, so now we have loaded our env, and now we need to access that variables, right? Okay, so how we can access that variable? So I will tell you. So we can simply make a class called settings. So inside your settings, so I have made a environmental variable called app.title, right? So what I will do, I will try to create the name of the that variable app title, and I would simply say that it is your string, right? And how I can get it, I am telling OS that get me that environmental variable, right? So what is the name of the environmental variable? So name is your environmental variable app title, right? So I'm following the exact same nomenclature. So it is saying that OS get the environmental variable from this particular file because we have already loaded that particular file. So now this is the environmental variable, and the variable name is your app underscore title. So you need to put the exact name here what we are trying to put in the config.py, right? So I would say that app underscore title. If you did not put the same exact name, so it will result in the error, right? So this is how you can define your config with some variables, right? So then what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create the settings object from this settings class, right? Okay, fine. So why I'm trying to create this object? So I need to import this config file, and from this config file I can import the settings. From that in settings I could access this variable, right? So this is the main work in which I could access all the variables which are listed in your .env file. I could access those variables. Fine. Okay, so this first step is your creating your .env file, and then we are calling a config or a Python script in which we can access those variables which are listed in your environmental variables, and we can pass those variables inside your another Python file. Fine. So this is the first step which we have done. Okay, so now we'll move to your routers, right? Okay, so routers, so I will simply say it as a new Python file. So I will simply call it as a default.py, right? So in this router file, so I am trying to import from FastAPI. So now we are trying to use the FastAPI, but I guess the FastAPI is not present, or the module is not present in our toml file, right? So what I need to do is I need to again tell the poetry add FastAPI, right? So it will try to add the FastAPI, right? And then after that I also need Uvicorn. So I will also say poetry add Uvicorn. It will also get added, right? So these two libraries I would be needing for my project. So now let's move to our default.py. So I will say that, okay, so from FastAPI I need to import your API router. Okay, so then I need to create the object of your API router, right? So then I'm trying to say get request. I will say that simply router dot get, and I am trying to say a slash, and then I will make a method called read, or I will say read root. Then I will say return hello world, right? So this is basically I'm trying to check whether my API is working fine or not. So this we have written a simple router in which we have made a default py file in which we are trying to, if somebody gets to that particular URL, right? So with a slash, so it will automatically get initiated, or it will be called, and then we will get the return as hello world, right? So this is the purpose of writing this path, right? Okay, so now the next thing is that, so we wanted to have our main file in which we wanted to call this thing, right? And we wanted to run our Uvicorn server. So what we will do, we will go directly to our main.py, and we will import some couple of libraries, and then we will start working, right? So first of all, I will say from FastAPI import FastAPI, right? Then after that, I will make a function. Let's say I will make a function called include router. So whatever files you wanted to include this in the router, so you are trying to include that in this particular function, right? So I will pass this object called app. So this include router will take the object of this fast API app, right? And then I will say that app dot include underscore router, and I will pass your default router, right? So for that I need to give the path. So I will say that, so I will say from API dot I need to go into this app, and from this app I need to go into the routers. Then I would say that import, I would say default, right? So here I need to include that default inside my app dot include router. So I will simply say default dot router, fine. So what we have done, so we have made a function in which we are trying to say that whatever is written inside this, we need to include it in our app, right? So this we have done, right? So after that we will make another then I will say that another function called start application, right? So here inside it, so I will initialize my app, and the app goes from fast API. So we are trying to create the object of this fast API, so it will take a couple of parameters. So let us try to see. So it is taking these many parameters. So I will include your title, right? So like it could have your description also, it could have your version also, right? And then there are a lot many parameters, so you can just go through each one of it, and then likewise uh, use on basis of your requirement, right? So for the time being, so I'm only including my title, right? So because we have already included our title in our .env file, so what I wanted to do is I wanted to get the title from this env, right? So we have already listed down. So what I will say that, I will say that from config, from API dot core dot config import settings, right? And here I would say that, simply say that settings dot app title, right? Simple, right? So if you wanted to have your version also, let's try to have a version also. So version I would say that 0.0.1, right? So this could be my version also, right? In that version, so you need to specify your app version, so in your config file. So let us try to do this. So I would simply say that app underscore version equal to 0.1, right? So let's say, right, or I would say the 1.0, right? So in the config also I need to give this app version. So I will say that app underscore version, it's a integer I guess, os dot get env, and I would say the app underscore version, fine. Okay, so now we have the version also, we have our title also. So what I will simply say that, I will simply say that get the version from settings dot app dot version. Okay, so now what we have done, so we have made the we have the environmental file, so we can access those environmental files by using our config file, and from the config, so we are trying to import it, and we can use it in the main app, right? Okay, then we haven't included this in this our app, right? So we have not included the app in our include router. So what I will say that include, and I will say that app, right? Because first we have initialized our app and now we are trying to include the router inside our app, right? Okay, right? Then in that function, so what we are trying to say that return app. Okay, then we need to write the main function, in which I would say that if name equal to main and underscore main, right? Then I would say that app equal to start application, right? And I need to run my server also, so I would simply say that uvicorn dot run, and inside that I need to pass the app. Then I need to pass my host, right? Right, and then I need to pass my port also, right? So for this host and port, so you can also define this host and port in your e.env file. Because why this is important, so let's say you are trying to productionize it, so you can make the environmental variables according to that need. That if the environmental is production, so then use that env as a production env. If it is a staging, that use that env as a staging env, right? So since we are trying to do it our local, so I would simply say that app underscore host equal to 0.0.0.0, and I would say that app port equal to 8001, right? Okay, so then I need to include this into my .env also. So I would simply say that app equal to host is a string, and I will say that os dot get env, and I would say that app host, right? Then we have the app port, which is your integer, and I will say that os dot get env, and I would say app underscore port. Fine, right? So version is your string, so I had made it integer, but it will say your version is your, it will take as your string value, right? But your port number it will take as an integer, right? Okay, so now from that main file, so I could simply say that host is equal to settings dot app host, and your port number is equal to settings dot app port. Fine. So this is how you can define your host and your port, right? Okay, so now I guess now we are good to go. So we need to run this main file, and let's see uh, how it works, right? So what I will say that I could simply run the main file. Okay, so it says that main dot file cannot be opened because, okay, so let us try to edit configurations, and inside that I will simply go into that file, right? Because earlier my main was some other file which is already being created, so that is the take it is taking, right? So now I wanted to get my main file run by your backend, right? In the which is based in your backend. So I will click on apply and okay, and then now I wanted to run it, right? So it got an unexpected keyword argument .env. So let's try to go back in your .env and let's check. So what is the error we have done? Import load env load underscore .env path .env directory, and okay, so here it is giving me error, so it is .env path. Okay, so we have fixed this. Now Uvicorn is running on this. Press Ctrl to quit. Okay, So former real number is required, not string. So we are trying to, okay, so okay, so this is your settings port, which is your integer, right? So basically you need to typecast it and then you need to change it, so otherwise it will give you error. Okay, so let us try to run it again. So now it has been run, successfully run. Okay, so these are the issues which you can get, right? So let's try to open your browser, and in your browser I will simply say that localhost, and here I would say that 8001, right? Okay, so now the hello world exists, right? So now we are trying to hit our API, and from that API, so we are getting back the results. So then we can put our docs, right? So here we have your Swagger URL. So for to access your Swagger URL, we have the docs, and to get the API hit, so you can simply put a slash or whatever name you wanted to give it, right? Okay, so what we have done, guys, so today in today's demonstration, so we have successfully built our FastAPI project using Poetry, and we are able to launch our first default API, right? So in the next lecture, so we will be learn more about the Docker container and how to containerize this, and how we can put our logs also, and we can put our other files also, right? So this is the structure, we can put it here, right? So in the logs we can have the logs, we can have the utils, here we are getting the helper functions, and we can call here in this manner, right? So okay, guys, so this is all from my side. So I hope you enjoyed the lecture, and please subscribe to my channel, and do like, share and comment. Okay, thank you, good luck everybody.